My husband stood in the doorway of the home we had built together and told me to get out and never come back because I could not give him a child. His voice cracked not from grief but from disgust. Behind him, his mother, Constance, stood with her arms crossed and smiled, declaring that a woman who couldn't bear a child didn't deserve this house. I didn't scream or beg. I simply picked up the 2 bags I had packed the night before, because some part of me knew this day was coming, and walked out into the night. They stood there, utterly sure of themselves, completely unaware that my story was far from over. For 4 years I loved a man who made me believe my body was the only thing standing between us and happiness. My name is Clementine Raw, and love has a strange way of making you smaller than you are, especially when an entire family stands behind the blame. I met Asher Kingsley when I was 26. He possessed an easy, effortless charm and worked for his family's lucrative logistics company. Our courtship moved rapidly. He showered me with attentiveness, memorizing my favorite meals and details. Within 6 months, he proposed on a pier at sunset. I felt entirely certain of my future, misinterpreting his mother's calculating gaze in the background for happy tears. We had a beautiful small wedding, and the first year of our marriage was genuinely good. We fell into an easy routine, balancing our careers while talking softly over dinner about the 2 or 3 children we hoped to have. I wanted a home full of noise, laughter, and tiny handprints on the windows. By the 2nd year, when nothing had happened, anxiety became an uninvited guest at our dinner table. By the 3rd year, we were sitting in sterile fertility clinics. While I endured endless hormone panels and painful procedures, Asher sat beside me scrolling through his phone. Every test result came back identical. There was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Yet Asher refused to hear it. He wanted a reason, and the way he looked at me made it clear he had already decided I was the failure. When I gently suggested he get tested, he snapped, pointing to his brother's 3 children as genetic proof of his own fertility. He let the entire burden crush my shoulders alone. Constance weaponized my grief with false sympathy, dropping sharp comments into conversations and intentionally seating me across from young cousins with babies at Sunday dinners. The taunting from Asher grew quieter but crueler. After a particularly exhausting round of testing, I asked him to just hold me. He looked at me with irritation and asked what good holding me would do if it didn't fix anything. I began to shrink myself to maintain a fragile peace, burying myself in my marketing career. It became the only place where my worth was measured by my capability rather than my anatomy. By the 4th year, our marriage was a frozen landscape of logistics and silence. I discovered the divorce papers in his desk 3 days before he spoke the words. My hands went cold looking at the neat legal paragraphs, reducing our life to property division. I used those 3 days to quietly pack my bags. When he finally confronted me, his face was cold and resolved. He yelled that he had wasted 4 years waiting for me to fix myself and that he deserved a real family. Constance materialized behind him to deliver her rehearsed line about me not deserving the house. I walked past them, closed the door and sat in my car for exactly 4 minutes to completely fall apart before driving to my parents' home. My mother held me at the door while my father silently took my bags. In the weeks that followed, my younger sister, Deline, became my anchor. She refused to let me minimize my trauma, forcing me to feel my fury and sitting with me through sleepless nights. Deline helped me navigate the legal proceedings, constantly reminding me that walking away with nothing meant I had finally stopped losing myself. She was also the one who pushed me to utilize my professional talents and open my own design studio. Though the idea of starting over felt impossible, I began taking small freelance projects at my parents' dining room table, pouring my broken pieces into my work. Word of mouth traveled fast. Within a year, I had a steady client base and my own apartment. Within 2 years, I opened a beautiful light-filled downtown studio and hired my first employees. I stopped introducing myself as an ex-wife and became Clementine Raw founder. Around this time, I learned through mutual friends that Asher had quickly remarried a wealthy woman named Theodora Lang, whom Constance had introduced to him before our divorce was even finalized. I felt a distant, strange numbness. I realized I had never been the actual problem. I was simply an obstacle to the pedigree Constance had always desired. I chose to leave their shadow behind and kept building my business. As my studio expanded, I crossed paths with an architect named Griffin Calloway during a community renovation project. Griffin was the polar opposite of Asher, quiet, steady, and an incredibly attentive listener. We worked together for months before our mutual respect blossomed into romance. When I finally found the courage to tell him about my past, the grueling clinic visits and the emotional abuse, he didn't flinch. He took my hand and firmly told me that none of those cruel accusations were ever true. For the first time in my life, I believed it. Shortly after, shocking news surfaced from my old social circles. After 2 years of marriage and no pregnancy, Theodora had aggressively demanded that she and Asher undergo full medical evaluations together, refusing to accept unilateral blame. The clinical results revealed the truth. The fertility issue lay entirely with Asher, and it always had. The complication had never been about the women he married. Sitting with that revelation, I felt a familiar ache for the 4 years I had spent drowning in false guilt, but it quickly dissolved into a profound sense of release. Theodora promptly left him, and Constance reportedly fell completely silent on the subject of grandchildren. Griffin and I married 18 months later in a serene ceremony by the water, surrounded only by those who had truly loved and supported me. 1 year into our marriage, on a quiet Tuesday morning, I looked down at a positive pregnancy test. Overwhelmed with disbelief, I called out to Griffin. He sat on the bathroom floor with me, and we cried and laughed together. Our daughter Wren was born the following spring. Holding her, the memory of every past taunt and clinic room felt like it belonged to someone else's life entirely. Today, Griffin and I have a home bursting with the beautiful noise I once feared I would never experience. My studio continues to thrive, and Deline is the fierce, devoted aunt I always knew she would be. I think back to Constance's final, confident words in that doorway, and I look at the beautiful life I built with my own hands and my own name. I stopped waiting for anyone else's permission to be whole. To any woman sitting in a quiet waiting room today, absorbing blame that isn't hers, your worth is not yours to lose, and sometimes walking away with absolutely nothing is the exact thing that clears the path for everything.